Hey, what's up YouTube? My name's the Crimson Scythe, and recently Capcom revealed a new game in the Monster Hunter franchise, Monster Hunter Wilds. And I thought I would take this time to go and rank all the monsters in the series so far, seeing as it is also the year of their 20th anniversary. So I thought this would be a good video to start off the year. This franchise has become one of my favourites in gaming history. I've been playing for 14 or so years, and it's incredible to see what monsters Capcom create, and as of today, we have gotten over 100 unique monsters to hunt, some more fearsome than the last. So to rank these monsters efficiently, I need to go back and hunt every monster I could. Now, I've no way of hunting monsters, especially from the old gen games. I grew up in the Tri-era. Therefore, I could only gain opinions based on what I saw via YouTube videos or Twitch stream. This list will be based on my own opinion alone. So if you disagree, that's totally fine. Everyone has different opinions on some of the monsters, and you could like a monster more or less than myself. So say if you liked Bulldrome, but I personally don't. I really don't mind you liking it more than I do. Just an added note, the footage you'll be seeing in this video will not be my own, as of today, or as of recording this, I have yet to acquire a capture card to record any of my own footage, and I can't record monsters I'm unable to hunt, so I would be taking footage either way if I wanted to do this properly. The way I'll be ranking these monsters is via a point system, and the points will add up all to 25, like individually, but altogether they'll add up to 100, so in the end, the best monsters will have close to 100, if not 100 itself, and then the lowest will have close to 0. The design aspect is merely based on opinion in itself. This is mainly to go over like the physical appearance of the monster and whether I like it or not. The overall enjoyment of the hunt in itself. This is mainly to see if I actually enjoy hunting the monster itself, because there are some really cool monsters that aren't really fun to fight or are just really boring. This topic's kind of like a sort of just one I put in randomly. This is more like how the monster uses the attacks it uses against you. And finally, the theme, or aesthetic. This is mainly for monsters with unique themes or ideas that accompany the monster. It's completely determined on how fitting the idea is to the monster itself. Now, with all that out of the way, there are a few extra rules I have in place. Firstly, I will not be going over subspecies, rare variants, or deviants in this list. As an example, normal Rathalos would be on the list, but Azure Rathalos won't be. This is mainly to shorten the list and to make things easier on my part. I could do future videos on subspecies or deviants if it is requested. Secondly, the monsters from the Frontier series or online, or even the mobile games, will also not be on this list. So, sorry for those who actually like these monsters. Most are cool, but I couldn't add them due to them being based as a Japan-only game, or China or Asia, wherever the games are from. Again, this is also to shorten the list. And finally, I will also not be including the crossover monsters from World, such as Behemoth and Leshen. As they are not from the Monster games originally, it's best to keep the list strictly to the base game monsters, as it could stem some arguments in the comments saying, like, you know, how Leshen's from the Witcher series or Behemoth's from Final Fantasy. And you are right, but these are monsters that have been added to the Monster games, and you can add them to the list if you really wanted to. But personally, I wouldn't want to cause any confusion to anyone who's new to the series. It's mainly for the viewer's sake, that is. Now with that all out of the way, pack your potions, grab your weapons, and let's get started with my ranking of the Monster Hunter monsters. Let's begin! Coming in dead last, we got Bulldrome. A common trope in the Monster Hunter series is getting a small monster and upscaling them into a large monster. Bulldrome is no exception to this. He's a larger version of a Bullfango. And what puts him so low is for a few reasons. The first being that the fight is over in a matter of seconds. Even when you first fight it, Bulldrome has some of the lowest HP of any monster, that it dies faster than it will probably take for you to find the damn thing. And even when you do fight it, the fight is as boring as ever. Bulldrome only has one major attack, and that's the charge. as in to headbutt into you, and that's it. It'll do the occasional donkey kick and shake, but it still shows how shallow his move pool is. The design is also the only thing I'm okay with though the massive mohawk doesn't do it for me. I find it a little excessive, but at the same time it's a nice touch that there are some minor changes to it. And that is why Bulldrome, the Wild Boar, takes last place. What can be said about Bulldrome can also be said about the Cephadrome. The only difference is that Cephadrome has less of a difference in appearance compared to the Cephalos that it's based on. The dark brown, almost bordering black scales do give it a difference, but besides that, it's the same looking monster, except for how freaking huge it is. I don't know why Piscine Wyverns are so big. They're bigger than some of the harder monsters. The only reason Cephadrome is higher than Bulldrome is that the fight isn't done in 1 minute. Though, warning, try not to topple it too much, as with other Piscine Wyverns, it just flops around and prevents you from getting close or even hitting the damn thing. Other than that, the Cephadrome doesn't do much for me. You'd think a monster based on the concept of a desert shark would be a good idea, but Cephadrome just doesn't fit that bill. I've never liked Plesioth. While many hunters know the dread that was old Plesioth, know the kind of BS that this monster brings. For starters, it starts off in the water, where you can't go into, so your options are either to fish him out, or wait for him to come out. Now, simple, right? Well, not exactly. For some reason, the Plesioth just doesn't want to come out of the water and will proceed to attack you with high-pressured water beams from across the map. But that isn't the worst thing about it. If you do proceed to wait, you're greeted to one of the worst offenders for broken hitboxes. Plesioth has a wide variety of attacks that stem from the water jets, flailing on the ground, running aimlessly, a tail swipe that shouldn't even hit for how tall the damn thing is, and the worst of all, the hip check. This move is notorious for hitting hunters in the most outlandish position ever. Behind the monster, gets hit. Behind a rock, you're not safe. At the other end of the zone, pray that you survive, and is why Plesioth takes the number 123rd spot. Monster just loves bringing new raptors into their games, and Gaiadrome is probably one of the worst of the bunch. It is a complete reskin of Velocidrome, with a white hue, a blue crest, and blue claws. The only difference is that Gaiadrome has like an icy glob it spits at you. Other than that, it is pretty much the same fight, with bites, lunges, and barging attacks. Most raptors are more for early game, than to assist you with learning the controls. I only put Gaiadrome this low because compared to Velocidrome, I don't like the colour scheme, which is why Gaiadrome lands itself in the 122nd spot. Much like Gaiadrome, Gendrome is not much of a good fight either. However, what's different about Gendrome is the design, which isn't bad. It's probably the more menacing out of the four, but that green does not sit right with me. Another thing I don't like is the paralysis, and which in any other game, paralysis is probably my least favourite status condition, especially in a game where you must be always on your feet. Paralysis lasts for some time and allows an easy hit from his pack. There's not much else to say about this monster, other than it's just plain boring and annoying. The Gypteros is a monster I don't think anyone likes. In fact, I've never even found someone who actually enjoys fighting this thing. It's always the most annoying monster to fight that gets me, with his constant spray of poison on top of the flashing. I just can't stand this thing. Its design is also not great, and with the fact it has rubbery skin, on top of its tail looking absolutely vile, the only thing it has going for it is the near end of the fight where it'll play dead. To new hunters, this would be a good trick, but it's then later deemed redundant when everyone knows that it'll play dead. Though I will admit that the concept is fun, I can't stand Gypteros enough to make it a redeeming factor. In many forms of media, fart jokes or toilet humour is a staple in comedy, right? And this is exactly what the Conqueror tried but ultimately failed. All this monster is a glorified joke. A joke that brings one of the worst status ailments into the entire series, the soiled status. This is a status that prevents you from using your items such as potions, mega potions, and anything else. Or anything consumable, that is. This can get really tedious because it prevents you from healing or doing anything else of that matter, and it can easily get you wiped out. Now, not many monsters use this status, which is exactly why it's so forgettable. And it's also forgettable to bring the one item that actually gets rid of it, which is deodorants. It does wear off after a while, but it's just so damn annoying. God. Still, fighting this pink ugly ape is an absolute joke. If there is a word I can use to describe Khezu, it's probably creepy. I do like how that the absence of music is a direct reflection of the Khezu's blindness, though that does kind of make the fight boring in my opinion. I also just find the Khezu a bit unpredictable. Its movements are filled with weird neck movements and fake outs that can slip you up. Plus, if that weren't bad enough, the Khezu also has paralysis, and you know that back when I was talking about Gendrum, I did not like paralysis, which again is a pain to deal with. Oh, and did I mention that this thing does not stop screaming? Every now and then the Khezu can't help but let out a wail, which absolutely infuriates me. The Khezu, in my opinion, is still one of the scariest monsters in the franchise, and it's why it takes number 118th spot on this list. Another bird wyvern making it into the bottom 10. Although what's different about the Great Jaggy is the size and movement. I love that it implements its size and weight into its attacks. Plus the cry of this monster is one of my favourites, but even after all that I still find it boring. And I know a lot of people are going to be in the comments like, but Great Jaggy can beat any monster. While this is a meme, I will tell you now that it pisses me off. I've been seeing comments with people saying how great this monster is. People who are new to the franchise will be thinking that this is some incredible creature, but it's really not. It's probably one of the most boring and probably one of the most lame monsters to actually exist. Here come the comments. I have a terrible history with Gravios. It has a similar effect to Plesioth, where hitboxes shouldn't be able to hit, especially that tail swipe, but what annoys me is how time-consuming the hunts were. Granted, I've gotten better, but every time I see this giant I can't help but feel salty from the past. It's like taking the charging of Boldrum, the BS hitboxes of Plesioth, whilst adding a defense so strong it's so infuriating. And on top of that, its Magma Beam cannot even be blocked. This is one monster I can't stand to hunt. It's not the worst thing in the world, it's just really infuriating. While making this list, I completely forgot the Great Jagras even existed. I haven't played World in a while, so it's kind of hard for me to remember something that I haven't played in a while. But even then, the Great Jagras, the only thing good about this monster is the fact that when it eats something, it grows in size. That's all it is. And realistically, it's not that fun of a fight. It looks cool, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, this fight is just boring. How is it that a monster with sleep status runs in a pack and is incredibly strong and intimidating is so bad at even, attacking and killing you? I mean, come on, why is the Great Baggy so bad at what it does, or what it should do? It should be like an assassin, it should be able to kill you in your sleep, but it doesn't. Its pack even taunts you while you're asleep. That's not a good way of using your ailment. Even then, the Great Baggy is a cool design, but that's all it is. This fight is so boring as well, and in Rise it was no better. Shengaren may be just the worst endgame monster to even exist. Many believe that Zora Magdro should be here, or even like Lao Shan Lung, but even then, Shengaren, as much as its design is so cool, it's so slow. In fact, in the old games, back when it was actually a thing you could hunt back then, it was so slow. It took like 5 minutes to even get to you. Even the clip I am using right now, the one that's like in 50 times speed, it took like that full like length of time sped up was about 5 to 6 minutes. And even then the fight is so boring. You just attack the legs and that is it. So boring. So disappointing as well. The third of the Raptor Quartet from the first gen, or second gen if you count Gyadrome. But Gyadrome just... It does things better than the other two that we've talked about so far, but it's still not great. The design's cool, a bit ugly if you ask me, but I like the red and purple that goes well together. The poison also actually works because, you know, poison and keeping a tab on that, and also having other Eye of Prey to actually watch out for with their poison, it can get really tedious to fight this thing, and it actually is a pretty challenging fight if you're not ready for it, especially for new hunters. Old gen hunters know what they're dealing with, but new gens may not. The Hypnocatrix is a monster I myself have never hunted before. Considering the fact that this thing is a giant bird that has sleep status, it's okay, I guess? Its design is pretty cool. The pinkish red feathers is actually a really nice design, and actually, while making this video, I actually discovered that this is one of the few monsters that has its own, music behind it, which is what you're hearing now, and it's actually really cool. I'm not gonna lie, this actually bumped up Hypnocatrix a few spots for me while making this. I actually originally had it a bit earlier, or was supposed to be earlier in the video, but after hearing this music, it's actually really cool. Not enough to make it high up in this list entirely, you know, but still something. As funny as its name is, the Nibble Snarf is just boring. Even though this thing looks like it would be a fun fight, it can be with the barrel bombs, especially when it's charging at you with its mouth agape. You put a barrel bomb in its mouth and it can just blow up, causing it to jump out of the sand that it's in. But other than that, it's actually not the best thing to fight. It's very, very boring. Even though it has a wide variety of moves like a sand beam and even you know, blowing back sand out of these vents in its body. The only thing fun about it is its name, Nibble Snarf. That's really it's this fun name to say, but out of all the monsters, it's the worst name in my opinion. It's the funniest, but not the coolest. For a monster that looks cool as Great Gyros, and the fact that you don't even need to actually fight this thing, unless you really want to get the armor set and you have to complete every set in the game, the Great Gyros itself is not the funnest fight in the world. It's actually quite boring, considering the fact that you fight in one of the coolest areas in the game. And its ailment of paralysis, I will say this again, my least favourite in all of the games. Sleep can be at least dealt with, and so can be the soil stats, but paralysis just isn't fun. And, you know, the whole design aspect is the coolest thing about Great Gyros. It's a snake. It's like a snake with like 4 legs, and that's okay, I guess. I don't think the Volvodon even knows what it's meant to be, and I don't either. It's got such a large variety of moves that I don't even know what it's meant to be. It has a bunch of rolling attacks, some slam attacks, a long tongue that can steal items, which is super annoying, a paralysis glob attack, which again, I will not repeat myself, and the soiled status, which again, I'm not going to repeat myself. You'll know how much I hate those status ailments, but I don't know, I don't find Volvodon that interesting. Even though it's nicknamed the Crimson Cannonball, which is something I would love to be, like, I love, but it's not, which really even puts it down further for me. The Celtis is probably one of my favourite designed early game monsters, and considering the fact that it's literally just a bug version of Bulldrome, it's actually much better than Bulldrome by a long shot. This thing does charge a lot, yes, and it's one of its main attacks, but it does it in a way that looks much better than Bulldrome. And it's also got a better design than Bulldrome. It's not boring to look at, it's actually really cool to look at. The Celtis does have another reason why it's higher up than Bulldrome, but that's for much later, considering, you know, we're not even, well, it's not really the only time we're going to talk about the Celtis in this list. I actually expected to have Velocidrome much lower than the other Raptors on this list, but for some reason it actually came up higher than the others. Especially, I'm surprised especially with Iodrome and Gendrome, considering Velocidrome is so bland. It doesn't have anything unique about it, it's just a Raptor. That's it. And considering it's the base of Gaiadrome, you'd also think I'd have it low down, but I actually prefer the design of Velocidrome over Gaiadrome, which I mentioned earlier. Yeah, but Velocidrome doesn't have very many unique attacks. That's the only thing bringing it down for me. Gyrototus is actually surprisingly really high. I actually did not expect Gyrototus to be high up on this list, and based on what we've talked about so far, I'm not surprised, considering my hate for a lot of the monsters we've talked about so far. But Gyrototus isn't, like, a terrible monster. It's one of the better Piscean Wyverns in my opinion. Much better than Cephadrome and Plesioth, that is. But still not a good monster in my opinion. It's so boring. The only thing good about it is its fight with Barroth in the Wildspire Waste. But other than that, it's just a mudfish. That's all it is. In the Monster Hunter universe, you have so many designs, so many cool ones in fact. Dragons to electric wolves, monsters that can punch and cause explosions, ones that have explosive roars, but a floating island with humanoid teeth in it is not one of my favorites. Yamasukami is probably the weirdest designed monster out of everything on this list. And considering we've already talked about Nibblesnarf, it's not that far off from Nibblesnarf. Or at least Nibblesnarf's not far from it. But again, I've never hunted Yamasukami, I don't know much about it. Its fights actually give a good idea, though I don't like the teeth in its mouth. It's unsettling to say the least. Paolumu was close to being okay, but I just can't stand this thing. It's so ugly to look at, and even though it looks like it would be cute in its intro, then it shows off its actual face, and it's like, ugh. Like, it's so unsettling to see this thing. The Paolumu is also one of my least favorite monsters to hunt, because it usually stays up in the air, and I am not an insect glaive user, or an aerial combatant, or a hunter, should I say. I also don't like the attack where it just flies around aimlessly and charges at you. It's really annoying. Okay, I'll admit it, Kuluyaku is actually pretty decent. It's not the worst thing in the world, and it's not the best thing either. It's close to being decent here, in fact. If anything, I actually originally had it in the D tier of this list, which will be in the next part, but a few monsters kind of took over, which originally were meant to be in this part of the list. However, Kuluyaku's best thing is that it picks up eggs or items from the ground and it uses it as like defense or weapons. And it's actually pretty cool to see that actually work, but I don't know, I just find this thing really weird to look at. I also can't say anything bad about Ozuros either. Its design is really cool, but it's also pretty weak for what it is. You'd expect a grizzly bear kind of monster to be extremely powerful or to be like a mid-tier boss, but no, it's actually one of the earliest monsters you fight. And in Free Ultimate, this guy was a bloody joke. In fact, Ozuros is probably one of the weakest monsters in all of Monster Hunter history. But it doesn't mean it's a bad monster per se. Though it's not the greatest, it's just really boring, with a cool design. The fight itself is pretty bland, with claw swipes, charging, and it even goes to eat honey every now and again, but the best thing to do to fight this thing is to actually go behind it and just whack it in the behind, is what I'll say. And there you have it. That was part 1 of my 6-part video ranking the Monster Hunter monsters. If you want to see this as like a tier list sort of video, or like you want to see what kind of tier these monsters would be in, this is definitely an F tier. Next tier will be the D tier that I'll be talking about. So, with all that being said, hope you all enjoyed. Please drop a like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, because please, that would be really nice. I hope see you all in the next video. See you guys then.